working on a lot of stuff right now. We got a lot of stuff going on in the background, so trying to
Behind.
get I've got started running Facebook ads for the school community this week, and
Okay.
then Jay and I are creating some GPTs for programming and a lot of stuff. So it's a lot of stuff that is outside of my normal skill of expertise. So the 2 brain cells I have left are fried by the end of the day.
They are. No kidding.
Yeah. But as one of my business mentors, Dan Sullivan, says, all of the, from wherever, and this is actually really relatable to, what we do here in this community here. So, let's say that you had an injury and you wanted to get back being able to run, we'll say, right? But that injury is keeping you from being able to run. Well, there's a lot of capabilities that you need to regain or even learn in that gap between not being able to run and being able to run, right? So, like for you, with either your split squat or the step up, right?
Mhm.
You had to learn new capabilities to be able to do that,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
that's an adaptation phase, right?
Yep. Mhm.
And so yeah, so there'll be new capabilities that I learn as I go through these all these upgrades. And it's actually been one of the best things about having Jerry around is that well, A, there's 2 of us working on projects, and then B, like there's certain things that I just don't have the capacity to even want to tackle that luckily Jerry likes to do. So, like it makes it a lot easier for me to like get things done. Like all of the stuff that you guys see in the classroom, like none of that is me.
Mm.
That's all Jerry. All of those classroom, like the cover photos or the cover images for the classroom, all of those things are Jerry. None of that stuff is me. If it was me, it'd be like a stick figure, right? And then that would be it. And even like there's certain things like my wife is remarkable to me at least, remarkably moldable in that man, if there's something she can't figure out, she's just gonna go after it and figure it out. And I used to think that I was like that, and I'm not like that. If it's not within my interest, it doesn't matter how hard I try. Like I was going through this business coach, one of their like for actually the Facebook ads, and she has this tremendous spreadsheet. It's tremendous for everybody else. It's horrible for me because I look at it and I get instantly overwhelmed,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yep.
And so, yeah. So, anyways, but yeah. So yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the background that I'm pretty excited about actually. Today's topic of conversation is something that I didn't really recognize that I did, but I did because of my back injuries, and then also with my knee injury, which is minimal effective dosage. And when I write when I write programming or what we call a blueprint for someone, especially in the beginning, I always say that reps and sets are a suggestion. They're not a hard rule. And if you're not able to do the prescribed reps and sets, that's okay. We're just going to start where we start because I know if we're consistent with it, where we start and 3 months from now aren't going to be the same place, right? So also they aren't going to be this. Now you could be doing the same repetitions and the same load, particularly in the beginning, like I did body weight split squats for a long time on, on various heights. It wasn't until about maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, where I started to flirt around with flat ground split squats. And then even then, I would have a wedge underneath my heel. And for a long time, I did split squats. If I didn't have the wedge, I had a dumbbell underneath my heel. And I did split squats body weight for a long time. When I first started, for probably about the first 9 months, and that was purely because that's what I could handle. That was the minimal effective dosage, right? And in the beginning of whenever I program for someone, I always tell them, like, or when we write their blueprint, I always go, okay, look, this first couple weeks may seem like it's not enough volume for you. I understand that, but you have an injury. We can always add more next week. We can't take off what we've added unless you've got, you can talk to Mr. Peabody or Doc Brown and go back in the Wayback Machine or get in the DeLorean. You're not going to be able to go back and take that back. And I can't tell you how many times when I had my back injuries, like that would happen to me, right? And then I just start to feel good. I'm like, okay, we can go. Let's go. And then I'm set back a bunch. So, and one of the other things that I see is like, so I have a cousin who just started working out probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And we talk about his workouts and programming and all that stuff. And I look at the volume that he does, and he's 3 months younger than I am. I look at the volume that he does, and I'm like, bro, you are just doing way too much volume. But he's, I don't know where he's kind of mashed up his programming from a bunch of different places, right? And so, and for a while, like, he's been chasing this 225-pound 1 rep on his bench for a while, and he was like really hammering it and a bunch of different like chest sets, and I'm like, dude, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but you can't recover. You're not recovering. And he couldn't believe, he's like, there's no way you do that few sets a week. I'm like, yes, there is. I do it. Now, he doesn't have a really physical job. And like, he's really physical around his house. He does like a lot of house projects and stuff like that. But I'm like, bro, I live 4 to 5 days a week and I do 4 hours of jiu-jitsu a week. Like, my body is taking abuse that you've never even experienced before, right? And there's a reason why I do. And guys at jiu-jitsu all the time will be like, hey, Sean, are you coming in on Wednesday? No, nope, not. I train Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Why? Because my body likes that. And I can consistently train that much. Now, could I train more? Yeah, I could probably train more. If I had like a training partner that like came to my place and we trained a bunch and we were really good at like knowing how much is too much, then like I could probably train a little bit more. But when I go to the gym and I got random rules with people or random sparring sessions with people that I don't train with all the time, like that's really hard to gauge, So, but the minimal effective dosage is that like in the beginning, my theory is that we test to see how we feel. And then, did you go too far or did you were you not far enough? If you went too far, then, maybe you need to stay where you were at that week or regress back a little bit. And if you went far enough, then, or if you didn't go too far, then we can always add more next week. And I'd rather add more next week than, than have to backtrack. And then as we're programming for you, um, or as we're writing your blueprint, how do we give you the minimal effective dosage so your goals are met, but also you have enough time to recover and you have enough time for the rest of your life as well. And I think that that's a balance that a lot of trainers, particularly because a lot of trainers are young, or a lot of coaches are young, um, or a lot of for guys, a lot of the influencers that guys see are on TRT or some hormone replacement therapy. Which, by the way, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that. You just have to recognize that when someone is on, it would be like a woman that was postmenopausal, trying to deal with some of that stuff and not taking any hormones, and then someone that is, and then comparing your journeys. Like they're not even the same thing, right?
Right.
And so we want to think about that minimal effective dosage so that we're not like massively overloading the tissue and the nervous system so we can't recover. And then like start to think about I don't believe that there's any bad movements. Do I think that there's some things that are more effective than others? Sure, right? But I don't think there's a bad movement per se. But we want to think about what are the things that we want to spend our time while we're doing our movement practice that give us, the most bang for our buck. And a lot of people will look at like something like a split squat and say, well, why would you not do like a lunge or a Bulgarian split squat? And my stance on that would be because the split squat gives us strength, joint health, mobility, and balance all in the same. You get them all, right? And lunges, even if you're doing like walking lunges, because most people just go to 90 in their knee flexion, they never get deeper than that. Well, then there's not really your joint is getting better because you're training it in some capacity, but you're not getting past that 110 degrees of knee flexion. So there's no strengthening of the knee joint. And then, yeah, you get some stability, but it's not the same thing as a split squat. And I would say the same thing for like Bulgarian split squats where you have your back leg on the bench. You get some mobility there, but it doesn't really load your knee the same way. And there's definitely use cases for both of them. But like if I'm going to say I want to give us the most bang for our buck, what is it? Here's what here you go. That's kind of like, so you want to start to look at like what are those movements, what are those exercises? Like if I had to choose one chest and shoulder movement, I would choose dips every day of the week and twice on Sunday, because they're, well, nobody ever looked at a gymnast and went, oh, well, he's not mobile and he's not strong, right? Or she's not mobile and she's not strong. Nobody looks at gymnasts and says that. Everybody inherently knows that gymnasts are mobile and strong. Now, the reason that they're injured all the time is because it's a sport and the volume that they train at. For the average human, you could scale that back and it wouldn't be that bad. So yeah, you want to look at that minimum effective dosage and also start to look at like, okay, well, what are the movements that we're choosing? What are the purposes that these movements are having? 50-year-old Sean, 20-year-old Sean might fight 50-year-old Sean when I say this, but I would choose an RDL over a standard deadlift every day of the week and twice on Sunday because there's more attributes that come out of the RDL than just purely a strength movement, like traditional, barbell deadlifts. 20-year-old Sean would be very mad at me right now, by the way. He's very mad at me because 20-year-old Sean loved the deadlift. So, like there's things that you want to start to look at so that like I said, you get the, and also you can take those movements and apply those movements. The dip is a terrible example for that, but we could scale that back to a place where you would have to go through a push-up progression to get to the dip, and there would have to be some progression through the dip before you could start to do them. So there's a progression for sure. But they provide the most bang for your buck across the variety of things that we were that I was just talking about. Yeah, I think it's an important idea for us. And as we get older, the biggest thing is our tissue's ability to recover and our nervous system's ability to recover. And our brain still thinks we're 30 years younger, but our body says, no, not so much, So anything to add to this, Sonia? Because I've been yapping for about 17 minutes. So
Yes, I do. Thanks.
yeah,
Before I forget,
yeah,
as you're listening, you're ticking off these things in your brain, and you're like,
yeah,
okay. But as far as the minimum effective dosage goes, like with my Patrick step ups, I can only do 20 reps, and then
oh,
I am fatigued, and even 20 reps is pushing it, so I just stop
yep,
instead of because the protocol is 25.
yep,
Well, that doesn't work for me.
right,
So,
right, yeah,
but at first, my ego was like, "Oh, well, you need to do 25." And it's like my body is saying, "No, we don't need to."
right.
And then the training volume. So you got injured this weekend, and I overdid it this weekend.
Oh, yeah,
I did 4 days straight of like kettlebell, barbell, dumbbell, and by Monday, my shoulder was so sore and my bicep tendon was
oh,
spasming. It
yeah,
was spasming.
yeah,
Like, what were you thinking? I had no break. It was 4 days straight. It was really stupid. Well, now I know for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. And the thing about all of those things is like, I don't know that you can take a kettlebell program. Well, the way that the way that traditional trainers use kettlebells versus the way that kettlebells are actually used in Russia,
Hmm.
right? Um, are uh, are very different. Now, there's some like reps, like kind of traditional sets and reps that you would do,
Hmm.
but there's not really. And the other thing too with that, without getting too far down in the weeds and too nerdy with like training blocks, when you look at like kettlebells, the way that they're used in Russia primarily is not the way that Pavel used them. By the way, I know that for a fact.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, it's a sport, and they use them as a sport. So you're doing snatch, um, long cycle, or jerk for traditionally 10 minutes. And like with the snatch, you get one hand set, right? You get one hand switch. And then it's you're judged as far as like how you place, um, based on weight class, age, size of bell, and then reps you did over the 10 minutes. Now, here in the States, we've made massive adaptations to like time frame. Um, but now there's definitely some sets and reps that come into that are a little bit more traditional, but they're on accessory lifts. They're not on the sport lifts.
Hmm.
And so if you're doing kettlebells I don't know how you couldn't, like, because it's a strength and conditioning tool. Like, nobody who really understands how to use a kettlebell goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going to use that to tone up." That's not how that tool is meant to be used, right? It's a strength and conditioning. It is a very anaerobic uh, tool, particularly because, now if you're a crazy person like I am and you've got a whole host of kettlebells, then you could use, I've got everything from an 8K, I have an 8K, 10K, 12K, 114K, two 16Ks, a 20K, a 22K, and two 24Ks. Now, largely, I had those because when my wife was doing kettlebell sport along with me, I was only doing snatch, so I only need one belt. Um, but she was doing jerk and snatch, um, and so she used two belts. So yeah, I mean, like if you have one bell, you might only have one belt. And the other problem with kettlebells is they jump, 9 pounds a bell traditionally, right? So you go from 8K to 24K, from 24K to 36K, I'm sorry, from 24K. I'm sorry. Let me go back. You go from 8K to 12K, 12K to 16K, 16K to 20K. Like that's how you go. You go in 4 kilo increments. And so, like, if you jump a bell, so you go from 8K to 12K, or 8K to 12K, that's a massive adaptation. Massive.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, here in the States, we've got, 5 pound and 10 pound and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah.
And over time, as we started to use them more here in the States, what they would call tweener bells, which were in between that were at, that was a 2K jump. Those became more available. But
Yeah.
back when I first started looking at kettlebells in like 2007, there was no such thing as a 14K bell. You couldn't find it, right? So yeah, I mean, when you're starting to do all those things and you're mashing them together 4 days in a row, your poor body doesn't have the time to recover.
Nope.
You know?
It did. Nope.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
I was it was like it's
Well, but that goes back to that statement of your brain thinks you're 20 or 30 years younger than your body really is, you
right.
know?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, you've got to wrap your brain around that and um yeah, I mean, it's the reality of it, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. But it's a learning lesson. You can't do anything about it, you know. You can only go forward from here.
Yep.
So, you
Yeah.
know, um let's circle back around to your Patrick step really quick and chat about that for a second. So now the funny thing about it is when people see that flat ground Patrick step and then it's 25 reps, they go, "Oh, this shouldn't be no big deal." And then you start to do them, and then it becomes a very different conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yep.
So but also like when you first started them, you probably weren't doing 20 reps either, right?
No. No.
Right.
Right.
So what over what, let's say 6 months, you've worked up to 20 reps, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty nice patient adaptation phase, right?
Well, yeah, that's not bad. No. At
um,
least doing them.
correct. Yeah. Um, so what is tell me what it feels like. How do you know that you're done at 20? Like what is the difference between 17 and 20 and 21?
My hip starts to fatigue. My outer
Oh,
hip, and I can't maintain. Um, uh, the hip wants to push out.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
can't keep the
Yep.
femur in place.
Yep.
It's
It
gone.
wants to go all over the place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had that as well. Particularly in that movement, and now that uh, I'm 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 working off the 6 inch stack or 6 inch step over here,
Okay.
um, and my goal is to do by the end of the year is half my body weight in a step up. Um, I'm a ways off from that, so we'll see if I get there, right? But I do notice for sure that as I fatigue as well, my pelvis starts to get a little
Yeah.
unruly, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
Mm-hmm.
do what it doesn't do what it tells it doesn't do what I tell it to do.
What to do. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And funny enough, um, I don't know why I'm so surprised, but I'm surprised because I really started to load my step up a lot this year. I think we talked about that earlier this year, and I still can't believe how sore my freaking VMO gets. Like,
Really? Huh.
yeah,
Wow.
like I cannot believe it. Still, like my
Huh.
it because I went from I jumped to on my last set a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago it was. I jumped up to 20 pounds total. Um, and I'd never done that before. And I did it for a set of 8. And oh my gosh, my VMO was sore for not like, I'm not talking like I can't walk, but it was sore probably a good 3 or 4 days afterwards.
Mm.
And if I could do half my body weight in split squats, and my my legs are not that sore at all, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just it hits the VMO so well, and I think too, like if your VMO isn't um, if it's not really strong, it'll it fatigues pretty quickly if it doesn't have that endurance and strength, and then your poor glute muscles want to start to come into play because
Mm.
now inherently your brain knows, hey, I'm not getting any support from the knee anymore, so I got to I got to try to cheat out the the knee support with the hip support.
Sure. Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah. I can't say that I've ever had my VMO sore. So maybe
yeah.
it's not working for
Well,
everyone.
yeah. I mean, if it, yeah, if what as you gain more strength with it, and
Mhm.
if you decide that you're going to load it, um, I, and like when I started to, I think when I started to elevate them some, um,
Mm.
I was really surprised at like the development of like when everybody thinks about the VMO, they think about the VMO to like here, but
Mhm.
it really goes way up into the thigh, right?
Okay. Uh-huh.
And um, it's pretty crazy how apparent it is um, as I've trained it more. That well, with all of those things, because with that in itself, you're getting such a targeted short range motion on the VMO, um, but on the split squats as well. But definitely on the step up, because it's so I mean, the only thing that's lowering you down there is that little VMO, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, we'll see how tomorrow goes. I actually didn't go to jujitsu today. My knee actually feels pretty good now. I woke up this morning, I was pretty sore, but I did some tib raises. I threw um, this little guy on the end of my foot here, like this. It doesn't want to fully extend. Like
Mm.
as I'm walking, I can tell I'm not fully extending on it. And even like when I'm standing here, I can feel like I'm not like fully extending as much. But so I threw this bell on the end of my foot
Mm. Mm-hmm.
to really work the full range and give myself a little bit of eversion as well. to really kind of get the full range uh, of that tib anterior because it's right at the top, and it's not as bad as it was. I'm kind of excited. I'll see how it feels tomorrow. That might have been the between the regress split squats yesterday. And it was pretty sore when I woke up this morning, so I wasn't sure if it was still from, you know, my jiu-jitsu experiment or if it was from the split squats yesterday. Um, so yeah, well, I'll have to see how that is. That's
How
funny.
much weight, how much weight
What
is that? How much weight is that?
it's a 10-pound kettlebell.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, yeah, and you could use like the way that the way that we first start with tib raises, because most people have never done a tib raise a day in their life, is I started against the wall so you can build a lot of that endurance.
Right. Yep.
But eventually we wind up loading them. So
Okay. Got it.
yeah, because you want to start to also build that muscle. And
Sure.
again, like everything, every let me really think about this before I open my dumb mouth and say something I'll have to take back later on. Yeah, most everything, like we will. There's a possibility of loading a movement,
Sure.
and again, the reason why you load it is to build the resiliency for external forces, essentially,
hmm
right? So, like, do you have to load a dip? No, you don't have to load dips. For a lot of people, dips are pretty damn hard, but eventually, if you do dips long enough, they're not hard. So you can do one of two things. You can either increase your reps, and then, unfortunately, sometimes when you increase reps too much and you don't balance out the rest of the shoulder, then you run the risk of a tendon ligament getting pissed off, or you
hmm
can load it. And I think you should do a balance of both things. Like, I'm not really prescriptive as far as like reps go. I think there's times where you need high repetition. I think there's times where you need low repetition, and I think you should vary them for very first of all novelty, so that you're not getting bored, doing the same thing and same reps over and over and over and over again. And then the second thing being you're you, you're building different types of strength with different rep schemes. Higher rep is going to give you a lot more muscle endurance, and then lower reps gives you more of that, kind of raw strength. But in my opinion, you want both of them, because it helps you to be well rounded, and then also like the higher reps gives you all that blood flow in the tissue, you know, and it gives you that good pump. Um, but I mean, if you've lifted lower reps at all that are pretty heavy, you can get a pretty damn good pump out of there too, from the tissue breaking or the tissue breaking down. So yeah. Well, Sonia, we've done it again.
Yep.
We've
We have.
we've you've listened to me yap for 30 minutes. So anything that you had to add to our conversation outside of the two things that you had?
Um, Other than, your post this morning was very timely for me because I was really frustrated with my shoulder and I was just like, you know what? I'm not even going to do my shoulder protocol today. I was
Yeah.
just fell out and then I thought, no, you know what? I just went down in weight and actually it felt good to do really lightweight
Yeah.
and it feels better. So,
Yeah. Yeah, because you want to flush the tissue, right? And also, like the, and I completely understand. Like literally, if someone would have walked into last Monday morning and they would have saw me split squatting, and they would have came into today, or I'm sorry, yesterday, and saw me split squatting, that on the freaking step with the 2 poles. I bought those poles just so I could demo with them. I did not buy them for me, by the way. I had no intention of using them. And,
Mhm.
now I'm using them. I'll probably,
Yeah.
maybe I'll be at them with another week or so. But yeah, you want to get that blood flow back in there. But also you want your brain to believe that you can still do the movement,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah, and it's such a critical component. So, well, nice work. I'm glad to hear that you
Yeah.
yeah, you were able to feel some benefit of that and not just have it, be a crazy idea. So,
Right. Right. Yep. So
all right. Yeah. Well, Sonia, thanks again for listening to me yap for 30 minutes or so. And I will chat with you soon.
all right. Thanks, Sean.
Yep. Thanks so much. Bye bye.